Chapter 14, The Psychic. A true psychic, Klein read the description silently and, without speaking again, followed Dunn, Smith out of the carriage. Welch's residence in Tingen was a single house with a garden, hollowed-out iron gate on a road that could accommodate for horse-drawn carriages at the same time, and street lights every 50 meters on either side of the road. Unlike those Klein had seen in a previous life, they were gas lamps, with posts slightly as high as adult men's for easy lighting. The black metal is close to the glass, enclosing the grid, casting a series of classical artworks like lanterns, cold and warm dancing, shadow and light. Stepping on the yellow-covered road, Klein and Dunn, Smith entered Welch's rented place through a half-open iron gate. Directly opposite the gate was a road for 2 wagons, paved with cement, leading to the 2-story house. Its left side is the garden, the right side is the lawn, the faint flowers and refreshing taste interwoven into one. Let people relaxed and happy. As soon as he stepped in, Klein's hair suddenly stood up and she looked around. He felt eyes watching him in the garden, in the shadows of the lawn, on the top floor of the house, behind the swings, in the dark corners. When it was empty, Klein felt like she was in a busy street. The strange contrast, the strange feeling, made his body tense and chill from his tail up. Something's wrong. He couldn't help reminding Dunn. Dunn, walking to the side without changing his expression, replied flatly, "Never mind." Seeing the night watchman said so, Klein endured the kind of creepy feeling of being tracked, snooped, and looked at, but could not find the target, and came to the main door of the single house step by step. "If I stay like this long enough, I'll get nervous." When Dunn reached for the door, Klein looked back quickly. The flowers were swaying in the wind, and there was no one there. "Come in, gentlemen." A slightly ethereal voice came from the room. Dunn twisted the handle, pushed the door open, and said to the woman on the couch, "Daly, are there any results?" The living room chandelier is not lit, and a leather sofa with 2 main patterns surrounds a marble coffee table. A candle burns bright blue above the coffee table, casting an eerie flicker of color over the semi-open living room, dining room, and kitchen. In the middle of the sofa sat a woman in a hooded black gown, blue eyeshadow and blush, and a silver chain with a white crystal pendant wrapped around her exposed wrist. The first time Klein saw her, she had a strange feeling, dressed like a real psychic. Is this playing yourself? Daly, the psychic with a strange aesthetic, glanced over Klein with twinkling green eyes at Dunn. Smith said, "The original spirits are gone, including Welch's and Naya's, and the little ones who are here now don't know anything." Spirit? A psychic? Are those unseen observers spirits? There are so many spirits? Klein took off his hat, placed it on his chest, and bowed slightly. "Good evening, Ma am." Dunn Smith sighed and said, "It's really tricky. Daly, this is Klein Moretti. See what you can find out about him." Psychic Daly's eyes immediately shifted to Klein. She pointed to the seat of the single sofa. "Sit down, please." "Thank you." Klein nodded, took a few steps, and sat down. Her heart involuntarily lifted. Is life or death? Is smooth through? Or secret exposure? Depends on the next development. And the most powerless is that they lack things to rely on, and can only hope for special. It's a really bad feeling, Klein thought bitterly. As Dunn sat down across from him on the love seat, Daly, the psychic, pulled 2 thumb-sized glass bottles from a hidden pocket at his waist. She smiled at Klein with her green eyes and said, "I need a little help. After all, you are not the enemy. You cannot be so direct. Rough treatment. It will make you uncomfortable. Feel pain, and even leave serious sequelae. I will give you some fragrance, give you enough tenderness and lubrication. Let you open yourself a little bit, really immersed in that feeling." "That doesn't sound right." Klein gave a gasp, and her eyes were surprised. Dunn on the other side smiled and said, "Don't be surprised. Unlike the Storm Bishops, here women are allowed to verbally flirt with men. You may understand, on this point, that your mother was a devout believer in the goddess, and that you and your brother attended Sunday school in the church. I know, I just didn't expect it to be so." So, Klein gestures, unable to find the right adjective, and almost blurts out the translation of old driver. Dunn turned his mouth upward, restatured. "Daly rarely does this. She just wants to calm and relax you in this way. She likes dead bodies more than men." "You make me sound like a pervert," the psychic Daly interjected with a smile. She opened one of the little bottles and poured a few drops into the bright blue flame. A distilled and extracted hydrol of night vanilla, deep sleep flower, and chamomile. "I call it Amanda, which is a Hermitian word for serenity. It smells good." As he spoke, the candle shook a few times, and the drops of pure dew quickly evaporated and filled the room. A clear and charming fragrance penetrated Klein's nose. His mood was no longer tense, and his mind was quickly peaceful, as if he were looking down into the darkness in the dead of night. This bottle is called the Eye of the Spirit, and it is made from the bark and leaves of the dragon tree and poplar tree, which are sun, baked for 7 days, fried and boiled 3 times, and soaked in Ranzi wine. Of course, there are a few incants in the middle. The amber liquid, described by Daly as a psychic, dripped onto a brilliant blue candle flame. Klein smelled the wine, the ethereal aroma. He saw the candle fire shaking violently, saw Daly's blue eyeshadow and blush glinting eerily, and even appeared double. It's a good psychic helper and a charming enough flower spirit. As Daly spoke, Klein felt her voice coming from all directions. Looking around, Klein saw that everything was shaking and blurry, like a thick fog, covering one layer after another. And her body was shaking, blurry, floating, and losing weight. The red is more red, the blue is more blue, the black is more black, and the colors are mixed like impressionist oil paintings, blurred and dreamy, and the surrounding pieces of overlapping mumbles come from waves, like countless invisible people talking. It's similar to the feeling I had when I did the transfer ceremony before, but without the crazy smell that makes people want to explode. Klein looked at all this and wondered. At that moment, his eyes were attracted by a pair of crystal eyes like emerald. Wearing black robes, Daly sat on the blurred sofa, eyes strangely focused. On the top of Klein's head, voice gentle smile. "Officially meet me, Daly the Psychic. It is I can still think calmly and rationally, just like in the transfer ceremony and the party." Clay thought, deliberately acting in a state of confusion. "Hello, the human mind is very broad, hiding a lot of secrets. Look, that sea, we can only understand the island above the sea. But in fact, under the sea, the island has a larger part. But in fact, in addition to the island, there is the whole sea. There is a symbol of the boundless sky of the spiritual world. You are the spirit of the body, and you know not only the island above the sea, but also the part of the island hidden beneath the sea, the whole sea. Wherever there is, there must be a trace. The memory of the surface of the island can be erased, but the part below the surface and the whole sea must have its corresponding projection." Daly induces again and again, and the vague winds and shadows round him also change in a similar shape. Just like Klein's spiritual sea is fully exposed here, waiting for him to find and discover. Klein looked on calmly, occasionally churning the ocean, and finally replied in an ethereal tone, "No, I can't remember. I forgot." He shows the pain just right. Daly tried again, but a conscious Klein was unaffected. "Well, that's it. Go back. Go back. Go back." The ethereal voice lingered. Daly disappeared. The wind and shadows began to subside, and the quiet taste and subtle aroma of wine were again evident. All colors returned to normal. The blur is gone, and Klein's body trembles, regaining weight. He opened his eyes, which he did not know when he had closed them, and found before him the bright blue candle and the Dun sitting comfortably. Smith, still daily the psychic, in a hooded black robe. Why did you use the theories of those evil lunatics at the psychological alchemy? Dun frowned slightly and looked at Daly. Daly put the 2 small bottles away and calmly replied, "I think it's pretty true, at least in line with some of the things I've seen." Before Dun could speak again, she spread her hand and said, "A tricky fellow. He left no trace." Hearing the sentence, Klein, who was next to him, breathed a long sigh of relief and asked skeptically, "Is it over? What just happened? I feel like I slept." "Is that a pass? Good thing there's a drill for the transfer ceremony." "Think so." Dun interrupts, looks at Psychic Daily, and says, "Have you examined Welch and Naya's bodies? The bodies can tell us more than you think. But sadly, Welch and Naya did kill themselves, and there are no traces of the forces that affected them." Daly stands up and reaches for the candle. "I'm going to rest." The bright blue light disappears, and the house is flooded with blurred red. "Congratulations! You can go home. But remember, you can't tell your family and friends about this. You have to promise." Dun leads Klein all the way to the door. Klein asked, "Don't you have to check for signs of curses or evil spirits?" Daly didn't say, just didn't. Dun replied briefly. Relieved by her previous worries, Klein asked again, "How do I make sure there's no more trouble?" "Don't worry too much." Dun moved the corners of his mouth and said, "According to statistics, 80% of living clients in similar situations do not suffer terrible follow-up." "Well, that's my impression of the number, probably, about. That's the other 20%. Klein wouldn't dare save face. "Then you might consider joining us as a clerical worker, so that we can spot the warning signs in time. Or just be extraordinary," Dun said casually as he approached the carriage. "After all, we're not your nannies. We can't keep watch over you all night long, even when you're with women." "May I?" Klein followed that line and asked. Of course, he had little hope. After all, how could it be so easy to join the team of night watchmen and gain extraordinary powers? That's extraordinary power. Dun stopped and glanced sideways at him. "It's not impossible. It depends." This twist shocked Klein, who stood beside the carriage for a moment before saying, "Really? Are you kidding me? How easy is it to be extraordinary?" Dun gave a little laugh, his gray eyes obscured by the shadow of the carriage. "Don't believe me. In fact, as a night watchman, you lose a lot, such as freedom. Putting that aside, there are other issues. 1. You're not a meritorious cleric or a devout believer, and you can't pick and choose. You can't choose the safest path. 2nd, Dun grabbed the handrail and mounted the carriage path. We, the victors, the mechanical heart, and other similar courts, deal with a quarter of the incidents every year that are the loss of control of the extraordinary. A quarter of the extraordinary out of control." Klein froze. At this moment, Dunham turned his body. Dark gray eyes, mouth without a smile moved. "And a big part of that quarter is our teammates.